We move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? I give the call to the Honourable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs. Can the Minister advise the House whether any of the 81 hardcore criminals released into the community following the High Court's decision last week were released into the community without a visa?
Call to the Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his question. I can confirm that all of those individuals required to be released as a result of the decision of the High Court are on bridging visas with appropriate conditions.
Call to the Honourable Member for Chisholm.
Thanks so much, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How have the government's actions to relieve cost of living pressures helped Australians doing it tough, and what opposition has the government faced in delivering this to help to people?
Order. There's far too much noise during that question. The Prime Minister has the call.
I thank the member for her question very much, and of course relieving cost of living pressures is our #1 priority. And we know those outside there.
Order.
I
Members
take
on my
the
left.
objection from the Shadow Treasurer,
Order.
who can't ask a question of the Treasurer, even though he's back today. He's back. Get ready, Jim. The fact is that the
member
figures
for
released
Deakin will
today
cease ejecting.
show that wages rose by 1.3% in the September quarter, higher than the inflation rate. Real wages rose in the quarter. They rose. They went up.
Order.
1.3 is higher than 1.2.
There you go, Angus.
Pretty simple.
There you go, mate.
Pretty simple. Pretty simple.
Angus, you
The
cheeky.
member
The
for
highest quarterly
Hume
growth
and the member for the
on
Treasurer will
record.
cease ejecting.
Now, those opposite said, of course, people will recall that lifting the minimum wage would wreck the economy.
That's right.
But they had more to say than that, Mr Speaker, because when they were voting against the Secure Jobs Better
The
Pay
member
laws,
for Fairfax.
their spokesperson on workplace relations, Senator Cash, said this: "It would return Australia to the dark ages. It would close down the economy. It would leave supermarket shelves bare. There would be nothing there." The fact is that they voted against this legislation. They opposed the increase in the minimum wage, and we are getting real wages lifting. Real wages lifting. But just like they opposed all the other measures, cheaper medicines, $200 million on 17 million scripts, they voted against it 6 times in the Senate. And we know that the Leader of the Opposition wanted no one to be able to see a doctor for free and wanted to jack up the price of medicines by $5 a script. Fee-free TAFE. The Deputy Leader said that this was a waste of taxpayer dollars. Well, there's 214,000 Australians have benefited already from fee-free TAFE. Energy bill relief. The member for New England claimed that this was Venezuelan communism, was what he said. The Housing Australia Future Fund, they oppose that as well. They oppose the biggest investment ever in bulk billing, even though now the AMA Vice President Danielle McMullen has said in Townsville she's going back to bulk billing as a direct result of our policy.
Concluded. The call to the Honourable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs. Can the Minister advise the House whether any of the 81 hardcore criminals released into the community following the High Court's decision last week were released into the community without a visa?
The question is in order. I'll give the call to the Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs.
Thank you, Speaker. And again, I thank the Leader of the Opposition for the question. I should confirm that there have now been 83 releases from detention, and all of those who have been released from detention have been granted and are on visas with appropriate conditions. And I say again that complying with the orders of the High Court is not something that is optional.
The call to the honourable order. The member for Patterson is warned. Give the call to the member for Holt.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. How is the Albanese Labor government helping ease the cost of living pressures and get wages moving again? And what other approaches have been rejected?
Give the call to the Treasurer.
Mr Speaker, the member for Holt is a champion for working people in her community and her country, and she would have watched with great interest today the release of the new wages data, which came out just a short time ago. What we saw earlier this morning was that the wage price index rose 1.3% in the September quarter this year and 4.0% for the year. This means, as the Prime Minister said, that real wages have grown now for the second consecutive quarter. This was the highest quarterly growth in the 26-year history of the wage price index, and it is the fastest annual growth in wages since 2009, Mr Speaker. Now, the Shadow Treasurer keeps interjecting, Mr Speaker. I mean, he doesn't get a question, and so he hopes that if he chirps enough that will be a substitute for a question. But I heard him earlier today, before question time. He's out there in the courtyard and he's talking about real wages, Mr Speaker. And it hasn't dawned on the Shadow Treasurer that real wages were falling 3.4% in the last quarter that they were in office. 3.4%, Mr Speaker. Now, they are now 1.4% in annual terms, which is still too much of a real wages fall, but we are closing the gap that we inherited from those opposite. 3.4% real wages fall under them, 1.4% in the numbers today, but the second consecutive quarter of real wages growth on our watch, Mr Speaker. Now, this isn't accidental. This isn't accidental. Wages growth is a deliberate design feature of our economic plan. That's why we supported an increase to the minimum wage. It's why we supported decent pay for aged care workers, and that was recognised in today's release, Mr Speaker. Now, those opposite spent the best part of a decade pursuing a policy of deliberate wage stagnation and deliberate wage suppression.
The Treasurer will resume his seat. Order. The Treasurer will just pause. I want to hear from the Manager of Opposition Business.
Well, Mr Speaker, on relevance, the question was...
the Treasurer will not interject while I'm hearing the point of order.
What is the government doing to get wages moving, and what approaches have been rejected? That is not licence to spend the entirety of his answer going over...
The Treasurer have not called the Treasurer. Resume your seat. The Manager of Opposition is entitled to raise his point of order in silence.
The Treasurer is a repeat offender, and he should be directed to speak about the policies of his own government.
The member for Wright will not use that language. The Leader of the House.
The point of order, Mr Speaker, the point of order raised by the Manager of Opposition Business actually explained why this answer is in order. When the question refers to what policies have been rejected, then to refer to the opposition's policies to keep wages down, to keep them low, as something that we have rejected is exactly what the question is asking the minister to respond to.
I want to deal with this. The Treasurer has been going for 2 minutes. Part of the question did say what measures have been rejected. I'm going to ask him to return to the question to make sure he's talking about policy, not personality. I give him the call.
Thank you, Speaker. We reject the deliberate wage stagnation and wage suppression which defined a decade of economic mismanagement from those opposite. And that's because on this side of the House we see decent wages growth as part of the solution to cost of living pressures, not part of the problem, which is what those opposite think. Now, Mr Speaker, the sorts of rubbish that we hear about wages from those opposite, and particularly the Shadow Treasurer, might get him a polite little golfer's clap over a sherry at that Cookers convention he went to in London, or at the H.R. Nichols Society on Friday, He's at the HR Nichols Society on Friday, Mr Speaker,
Order.
but we take a completely different approach to those opposite. Getting wages moving again is a key part of our economic plan, and we are pleased to see today for the second consecutive quarter that real wages are growing again.
For Brisbane.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Education. Most high school students can't vote, yet the decision of your government to push more coal and gas is harming their future. That is a big reason why this Friday students will hold a school strike for climate, gathering in their thousands in cities and towns across the country. Minister, do you support the students being able to strike this Friday and to leave school to protest for climate action and against more coal and gas?
Order. Members on my left will not interject while questions are being asked. Give a call to the Minister for Education.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for his question. My view is, I hope pretty uncontroversial, that school students should be at school during school hours. And, you know, I want our kids to be passionate. I want our kids to care about democracy, and I want our kids to care about the future, but I also want our kids at school.
Give the call. Order. Give a call to the honourable member for Bean.
Speaker, my question is to the Deputy Prime Minister. Following today's release of the Australian Signals Directorate's annual cyber threat report for 2022-23, what action is the Albanese Labor government taking to meet these threats, and why is this required after a wasted decade in defence?
Call to the Minister for Defence and the Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I thank the member for his question. And today the Australian Signals Directorate released its annual cyber threat report, and what it shows is that there is a worsening cyber threat for our country. We're seeing an increase in cyber crime. We're also seeing an increase in the interest of state actors in our critical infrastructure, including our defence, and that includes an increase in the interest in our work on acquiring a nuclear-powered submarine capability under the banner of AUKUS. And what this requires is an improvement in our defence, in our cyber defence capability, which is what we are doing through the Australian Signals Directorate. But this task has been made so much harder by the mess that has been left to us by the Leader of the Opposition. When the Leader of the Opposition announced an increase in our cyber capability in March of last year, there was an $8 billion hole. Big announcement without the money to back it up, just as there was an announcement for $35 billion for guided weapons, but only $1 billion was allocated. Big on the fanfare, light on the substance, because those opposite weren't doing defence policy, they were just running an advertising agency, which is what they literally did on the 4th of January in 2020, when at the height of the worst bushfires in our country's history, they used the Australian Defence Force to cut an ad to raise money for the Liberal Party. Now, this government is making the difficult decisions to prioritise defence spending on where it's needed the most, and that definitely includes our cyber capacity. But we also understand that what that also requires is an increase in our spending on defence, and that actually stands in stark contrast to those opposite. Back in May of this year, the Shadow Treasurer said, and I quote, "The defence budget should be within the envelope that's already been established." That was the Shadow Minister. That was the Shadow Treasurer. And last week, the Shadow Minister for Defence backed that in when he said, "I can't commit to increased spending." When it comes to those opposite and it comes to defence, you'll get hoopla, you will get singing and you will get dancing, but you will not get an extra dollar for defence. Well, this government is taking defence spending to 2.3% of GDP over the next 10 years. And that is a 10% increase in the spending trajectory on defence that we inherited from those opposite, because we are committed to making the difficult decisions to keep Australians safe.
Give the call to the honourable member for Wannon.
My question is to the Minister for Immigration. The ABC has just reported that following the High Court decision, the government released some of the 80 hardened criminals, which include murderers, rapists and child sex offenders, into the community without a visa. Is this true?
Order. Members on my left do not need to add side effects, sound effects as well. Order. Anyway, the House will come to order. Give the call to the Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and I thank the Shadow Minister for his question. And I say again, complying with the orders of the High Court is not optional. It is incumbent on this government and on any government. All those who have been required by the decision of the court to be released have been placed on appropriate visas with appropriate conditions, and as I've outlined at some length in the chamber, there has been quite an extensive process of engagement with relevant law enforcement authorities.
Order. The member for Latrobe. When the House comes to order, I'll hear from the member for Pearce.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Development. How is the Albanese Labour government getting on with the job of delivering critical transport infrastructure, including in my electorate, while also doing the responsible work of cleaning up the mess left behind by the Liberals and Nationals? Thank you.
No, order. The Minister will pause and just resume his seat. There is far too much noise during questions. I want to make this clear. I've got to hear the questions and they've got to be heard in silence. What comes after is up to the House. But for the purpose of question time, questions have to be heard in silence, without commentary, any effects at all. So I'm just going to ask the member for Pearce to state a question again so I can hear the entire question.
My question is to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Development. How is the Albanese Labour government getting on with the job of delivering critical transport infrastructure, including in my electorate, while also doing the responsible work of cleaning up the mess left behind by the Liberals and Nationals? Thank you.
Give a call to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government.
I thank the member for Pearce for her question and, of course, for her continued advocacy for infrastructure in her electorate, including projects like Metronet, the Yancheep Rail Extension and, of course, the Mitchell Freeway. As members know, this government has been doing the hard work of cleaning up the mess that those opposite left. We'll soon be announcing our response to the Independent Infrastructure Review, which has already highlighted just how reckless the coalition has been when it came to managing or not managing our infrastructure investment pipeline. Their legacy and the path that they set for this nation is $33 billion of known cost blowouts and an inability to add any new infrastructure projects to the pipeline until the year 2033. It is a breathtaking indictment on every single one of those opposite, but particularly those in the National Party. It's an indictment on their economic management and their failure to genuinely deliver for their communities. While we've been doing the hard work of responding to the recommendations of the review, negotiating with the states and territories, we've of course also been getting on with the job of construction. We've completed the following projects: the Mitchell Freeway extension to Hester Avenue in the member for Pearce's electorate, the Townsville Ring Road Stage 5 extension opened, Bruce Highway, Bribie Island to Steve Irwin Way in Caboolture, and we've completed that. The Barwon Head Roads upgrade Stage 1.
The Minister will pause. The Minister will pause. The member for Hume is warned. If I'm pausing a minister, it's because there's too much noise in the House. There is way too much noise. This will not continue. The minister is going to be heard in silence. It was the same yesterday when this minister is on her feet. She deserves the respect to be heard in silence. Give her the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Barwon Heads Road upgrade Stage 1, which I've opened. We've commenced projects like the Huon Link Road in Tasmania, the Tanami in Western Australia, the next stage of the Jarvis Bay Road intersection upgrade, the new Midland station at Metronet in WA, and, of course, announced first by this Prime Minister when he was Infrastructure Minister, the Rockhampton Ring Road, which the Coalition not only failed to start any work on, you actually didn't provide enough money to do it. You did not provide enough money to do it, a project being delivered by the Albanese Labor government.
Members
we
on my
reached a
left.
major milestone on our election commitment to transition Perth's buses to electric. We're nearing completion on the Nowra Bridge project in New South Wales, with all lanes now open to traffic. The Barton Highway upgrade, we remember that, that's now got vehicles travelling on it for the first time in the final alignment. We awarded the design and construct contract to the Monaro Highway. We're opening the Menini overpass in part of the Cairns Southern Access Road. We're getting on with the Majors Road interchange in South Australia. The Bridgewater Bridge is well under construction, and we're nearing completion of the Townsville Northern Access interchange. While we saw the Liberals and Nationals all about announcement, we're getting on with the job of actually delivering.
The member for Gippsland is seeking the call on a point of order.
Mr Speaker, seeking leave to table the full list of documents the minister has actually started projects and completed in her time as minister.
Resume your seat. Order. When the House comes to order, members on my left cease interjecting. I'll give the call to the member for Wannon, but the House will have to come to order first. The member, the Treasurer, will cease interjecting. Give the call to the member for Wannon.
My question is to the Minister for Immigration. How many hardcore criminals released from detention got a letter from the Department of Home Affairs that said they were being released as an unlawful non-citizen?
Call to the Minister for Immigration, Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs.
Thank you, Speaker. And once again, I thank the Shadow Minister for asking a question of me. It's a pretty similar one, and the answer will be similar. I say again that complying with the orders of the court is not optional. We have to give effect to the decision that was made, and all of the 83 releases required by the decision of the court are people who are on bridging visas with appropriate conditions.
Give the call to the honourable member for Blair.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How are Medicare urgent care clinics helping Australians get urgent health care when they need it and helping ease pressure on hospital emergency departments? Why is this important after a decade of cuts and neglect?
Call to the Minister for Health and Aged Care.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for Blair for his question. He's such a strong advocate for better health care, better aged care in his Ipswich community, and a really strong supporter of the Ipswich Medicare Urgent Care Clinic that's been open for weeks now. There are now 38 clinics open and operating, with 58 to be open by the end of this year, Mr Speaker. They'll be operating 7 days a week, extended hours, open to walk-in patients who need urgent care for non-life-threatening emergencies, either for themselves or for their kids, Mr Speaker, like Billy and his mum, who went straight to the Ipswich clinic with a suspected broken wrist from playing basketball. 12-year-old Billy was triaged in just 5 minutes, Mr Speaker. He was seen shortly after by a doctor. He was then x-rayed, he was treated with a splint, and he was then connected for a physio appointment the following week, all done within 2 hours, Mr Speaker. Or Melissa, in the member for Lindsay's electorate, who took her daughter to the Penrith Urgent Care Clinic with a possible ankle fracture from playing soccer. She was seen, x-rayed and discharged with a cam boot in less than 1 hour, Mr Speaker. Melissa's mum said, and I quote, "Why would anyone go to the emergency department with this sort of injury when the Medicare Urgent Care Clinic can deal with it so quickly?" And Mr Speaker, it's not just quickly. Importantly, these appointments are completely free of charge. They are fully bulk billed. All you need to do is take your Medicare card. So far, with the 60,000 occasions of service that have already been delivered, a third of them are for kids under the age of 15. A third of them are on the weekend, when often people can't get in to see their usual GP. And of the weekday services, fully 1 in 5 are after 6 p.m. And these are not just providing high-quality urgent care where and when people need it, completely free of charge. As the member for Blair said, it's also taking much-needed pressure off our overcrowded emergency department. As we know, Mr Speaker, almost half of presentations every year to our EDs are semi- or non-urgent presentations, so-called Category 4 or 5s. It's early days, Mr Speaker, but we know these clinics are already making a difference. The Logan Hospital in the Treasurer's electorate, Category 4 and 5 presentations have gone down by 10% since the Logan Medicare Urgent Care Clinic was opened, compared to the July and August average. At the Ipswich Hospital, it's fully a 20% reduction in that type of presentation, a huge relief of pressure. This government was elected, Mr Speaker, to strengthen Medicare. We're delivering on that promise, tripling the bulk billing incentive, delivering cheaper medicines and rolling out a network of Medicare urgent care clinics.